When I was about 12 years old, my family moved into an old apartment complex, one that had been standing for over 50 years. Some residents had lived there their entire lives, watching generations come and go. The place had its quirks, but one rule stood out even to a kid like me: a strict no pets policy. The landlord wasn't vague about it. Too many pets had gone missing around the area, he explained, so the solution was simple: ban them entirely. That way, no one would have anything to worry about. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I was quiet, kept to myself, while my older brothers were the exact opposite, making friends with nearly every kid in the complex and surrounding neighborhood. Every day after school, they begged my mom for change so they could visit the Candy Lady, a local woman who ran a makeshift convenience store out of her apartment. She sold snacks, bulk gummies, chips, cookies, all the things kids loved, and resold them to neighborhood children. I had never been inside her apartment, but I was curious. Every time I asked my brothers to let me come along, they refused. One day, I took matters into my own hands. I stole $1 from my mom's purse, terrible, I know, and followed my brothers and their friends, determined to discover where the Candy Lady lived. I stayed back, observing from a corner, and watched them go inside. The next day, I went alone. I knocked, and the door opened to an older Caucasian woman with a warm smile, a presence that made you immediately lower your guard. She invited me in, asked my name, and introduced herself simply as the Candy Lady. She chatted easily, asking about school, my friends, and life in the complex. When I admitted I mostly kept to myself, she looked at me with sympathy. "Oh, honey, kids don't usually come here alone. Where are your friends?" I explained that I didn't have many friends, that I preferred watching rather than participating. Something about that seemed to resonate with her. She told me to take whatever I wanted, free of charge, gesturing toward the piles of candy and snacks. My little kid self didn't hesitate. I stuffed my pockets and arms with treats and left feeling like I had discovered something magical. But when I returned 3 or 4 days later, things had changed. The warm, welcoming smile was gone, replaced by twitchy, nervous movements. I hesitated, suggesting I come back later, but the moment she recognized me, her face softened. "No, come in," she insisted. Inside, the routine shifted. This time, she told me the freebies from my first visit were a one-time gift. If I wanted more, I would have to help her first. She handed me a garbage bag and asked me to take it to the dumpster, not the one in our courtyard, but the one next door. I thought nothing of it. Chores were normal for me, and I was too focused on the candy reward to question her. Days turned into weeks, and the routine continued. Every afternoon, I finished homework, took out the trash, and collected my payment in snacks. But 1 month in, something changed. As I walked to the dumpsters, I noticed one bag wasn't tied properly. I leaned down to secure it, and that's when I smelled it. Metallic, rotten. My stomach twisted as curiosity overcame fear. I peeked inside, just a little, and froze. Wadded paper towels soaked in blood, clumps of hair, small plastic-wrapped bundles. I dropped the bag and ran home as fast as I could, sobbing, and told my mom everything: the visits, the chores, the trash, the blood, the hair. Her reaction shocked me. She sighed, said she would check, then returned minutes later, annoyed. "She was just throwing the trash away," my mom said dismissively. "Stop wandering so far and doing favors for strangers." That was it. No questions, no horror, just a cold dismissal. Years passed. I buried the memory. I didn't think about it. Until my brothers ran home one day, screaming that the candy lady had been arrested. A chill ran down my spine, though my mom barely reacted, telling them to mind their own business. Then, about 10 years later, during a dinner with my mom, I casually asked if she remembered what I had found in the candy lady's trash. Her face went pale. Turns out she had asked the landlord at the time, and he had told her the truth. The candy lady had been killing and skinning animals she found nearby. She was the reason pets kept disappearing, and the reason the building had a strict no pets policy. I had been helping her dispose of the evidence. Dozens of trash bags filled with skinned animals. The only reason she was ever caught was that neighboring apartment residents complained about the smell from their dumpsters. That's how she was discovered, and that's how I realized with horror that I had been assisting a monster. I've never seen her again, and I don't want to know what became of her. But learning the truth, seeing how my actions had aided her, it haunts me still. I've always loved animals, and the thought that someone could so casually take their lives chills me to the core. I keep my pets safely locked inside, always, because people like her exist, and sometimes even innocent actions can play a part in something monstrous. About 10 years ago, I was living in a major U.S. city while attending college, sharing a cramped apartment with 2 other roommates. It was a typical student setup, tight, chaotic, but manageable. One of my roommates, Christy, had a habit of bringing questionable people back to our place. Some were simply odd, others downright sketchy. During that fall semester, she befriended a guy from her advertising class who called himself Dallas. He quickly became a weed dealer and, before long, a regular fixture in our apartment. From the moment I met him, a gnawing feeling in my gut told me something was terribly off, though Christy seemed charmed. She denied they were sleeping together, but the way she clung to him made me suspicious. It was a strange dynamic, but my other roommate and I tolerated it. We found him charismatic enough, though neither of us understood what Christy saw in him. One evening in particular stands out. We had him over for dinner. He talked incessantly about himself, his impressive life, playing for our college football team, his success in dealing, and a newly started legitimate business at the age of 23. He wanted to impress, but something about him didn't sit right. He was only 5'4", maybe 150 pounds soaking wet, yet he carried himself like he owned the room. We nodded along, humoring him, but my roommate and I knew he was full of lies. Christy, of course, laughed it all off. He came over a few more times, but nothing felt truly dangerous until one random Tuesday afternoon. That day, my other roommate went to buy weed from Dallas at his off-campus apartment. When she arrived, what she saw would haunt me for years. Christy was passed out in a lazy-boy chair in the corner of his living room, nearly unresponsive. This was the middle of the day. Dallas never mentioned her presence and acted as if nothing was unusual. My roommate freaked, shaking Christy awake. When she finally came to, groggy and disoriented, she told my roommate to leave and drifted back to sleep. When she told me what happened later, we both agreed. This was beyond weird. It confirmed what we had suspected. Dallas wasn't safe. A few months later, Christy stopped hanging out with him, claiming he got angry because she refused to sleep with him. That's when we learned something shocking. Dallas had been engaged to another woman the entire time, and Dallas wasn't even his real name. At the time, I felt relieved that he was gone, but 2 years later, his real name would surface again, and with it,
a horror we never could have imagined. By then, Christy and I had lost touch, having moved to different parts of the city. One night, I received an alert on my phone. A newly transferred student from our college had gone missing after leaving a campus bar the night before. The story spread like wildfire across news outlets and social media. A few days later, the unthinkable was confirmed. The girl had been murdered. That same day, my phone rang. It was my old roommate. She didn't even say hello. "Do you remember what Dallas's real name was?" she asked. I paused. "Yeah, I think so." Then it hit me like a punch to the stomach. She told me to go online. He killed that girl. I searched his real name. There it was, his mugshot. That same cocky, self-important guy I had once shared a dinner table with was now staring blankly into a booking photo. Next to it was a picture of the girl he had murdered. I felt sick. The details were worse than I could imagine. Apparently, he had taken her home that night, probably expecting a one-night stand. But something went horribly wrong. There was force, trauma, and strangulation. Then he did something truly terrifying. He attempted to cover it up. He cleaned his apartment, not thoroughly, just enough to delay discovery. Then, in the coldest, most calculated move imaginable, he placed her lifeless body into a storage container and transported it via rideshare to his grandmother's house, where he buried it somewhere on her property. I remember staring at the screen, unable to comprehend the methodical precision. This wasn't impulsive, it was planned. He had calmly carried her body, smiled at the driver, made small talk, as if it were nothing. Security footage from the bar eventually pieced the puzzle together, and he was arrested almost immediately. But the horror didn't end there. Once the story broke, countless women came forward, sharing chilling encounters with him, times they had felt uneasy, gotten bad vibes, or narrowly avoided going home with him. Every lie he had told us, every story about his football career or successful business had been fabricated. He preyed on younger women, and we had unknowingly let him into our home. We had shared meals, conversations. Christy had trusted him. Looking back, I shudder at how close we came to unimaginable danger. That poor girl had no idea who she was dealing with. Neither did any of us. I still think about it sometimes. The calm, smiling facade, the charming lies. The reality underneath was a predator lying in wait. The thought of this night still makes my skin crawl. It started innocently enough. I was out shopping for school supplies and items for my new apartment during the first week of grad school. I had just moved to a new city, utterly unfamiliar with the streets, and I didn't even have a cell phone yet. I'd left the one my parents paid for back home. I felt grown, independent, capable of taking care of myself. In retrospect, I might have been foolish for thinking that. As I loaded my purchases into my car and prepared to leave the parking lot, I noticed a truck pulling up behind me. It was late, the streets nearly deserted, and the evening air carried an uneasy stillness. As I drove away, so did he, matching my every turn. Down a long retail street with countless stoplights, I realized this was no coincidence. At each red light, he positioned himself so he could stare at me, either directly or through his mirrors. His gaze was unwavering, unrelenting, and a shiver ran down my spine every time I felt it lock onto me. But the terror truly escalated when I glanced over beside me at one light. My stomach dropped. He was doing something obscene, clearly deriving pleasure from the fact that I was terrified. Panic clawed at my chest, my heart raced, every instinct screaming to escape. But the city was a labyrinth, and I had no way to call for help. He swerved close to my car, sped up to my bumper, hit his brakes when he was ahead, and ran red lights just to stay in my path. I tried to shake him. I cut through intersections on hard yellows, changed lanes suddenly, even faked a turn onto a freeway ramp. But he followed every deceptive move. My panic soared. Classic rock blasting from my speakers, I forced myself to sing along, trying to distract from the rising dread, keeping my speed steady so fear wouldn't make me crash. Desperation drove me across town to a supermarket that had a police station inside. Relief came when he saw the cop cars and sped away before the officers could reach him. I filed a report, demanded a police escort home, convinced this monster was waiting for me outside the station, and I was right. The surveillance footage was horrifying. There he was, tailing me the entire time I shopped, weaving through aisles, lurking close enough to grab my elbow if he'd wanted, circling the lot, waiting for me to leave, tracking every move. I remembered 6 of the 7 digits of his license plate, the make and model of his truck. And yet the police could do nothing. He said, she said, they said, because the video didn't capture anything technically unlawful. I swapped cars with a friend for a few months just to feel safe, and tried to resume my life, carrying a lingering unease like a shadow. Years passed. Nearly 15 years later, I was watching a Discovery ID episode about the kidnapping and murder of Sandy Jeffers when my world tilted. The mugshot of her killer, Aaron Lee S.K., stopped my heart. It was him, the same man who had terrorized me. Anger, disgust, and a deep, cold horror washed over me. Law enforcement had done nothing, and I realized that if intervention had come back then, perhaps Sandy's fate could have been different. I tracked down the investigator in her case, verified details about the vehicle changes, and gave my statement. While she couldn't confirm if my encounter was with SK, she assured me that he was now serving life without parole. Yet, even knowing he can no longer harm anyone, a chilling thought lingers. There was a time when this predator was free, stalking me in the night, feeding on fear, and nothing could stop him. The memory of that evening still haunts me, a dark reminder of how close I came to becoming just another victim.
In the fall of 1974, my grandmother was 30 years old, juggling 4 jobs just to support my dad. Life was a relentless grind, but she had a strong work ethic and took pride in every shift she worked. One of her jobs was as a hostess at a high-end steakhouse called the Moonraker, a restaurant known for its upscale clientele and a steady stream of regulars. The place attracted businessmen, socialites, politicians, and even the occasional celebrity. But for my grandmother, one man stood out. He was new in town, and every Thursday night, without fail, this handsome, impeccably dressed man would arrive. Charming as ever, he never simply walked in. He always called ahead, ensuring that his preferred table and waiter were ready. The same table, the same waiter, every week. The table had a perfect view of the front doors, but was close to the back exit. This man was polite, never flirtatious, never rude. His voice was warm, confident, disarming. He would greet my grandmother by name, ask how she was, and make small talk before she led him to his table. For months, this routine never wavered. But one Thursday, he didn't show. The next Thursday, nothing. No call, no reservation, no explanation. Just gone. At first, my grandmother thought he might have left town or simply lost interest. The steakhouse was in Utah, after all, and life went on. What she didn't know was that while she had been smiling at this charming stranger every week, he had been hunting women in the same city. One of her co-workers would never return. Months later, his face was all over the news. The same man who smiled at my grandmother every Thursday night, the one who knew her by name, the one who seemed to watch the door like a hawk, the one who disappeared without a trace. His name was Ted Bundy. By then, the entire world knew the name, and so did my grandmother. At first, she said it didn't feel real. She had met plenty of men like him, smooth talkers, polished businessmen, regulars who knew how to play the part of the perfect gentleman. But the more she thought about it, the more uneasy details resurfaced. How he never missed a Thursday. How he preferred the non-smoking section, as if the haze might obscure his view of the entrance. How he'd order multiple bottles of hard liquor from the bar, enough to loosen up, never enough to lose control. How every single week she'd watch his light tan Volkswagen Beetle roll into the parking lot, the same lot where, just a stone's throw away, Carol Durant was abducted, barely escaping Bundy after he posed as a police officer to lure her into his car. Then there was my grandmother's co-worker, the girl who went missing that fall. At first, it seemed like another tragic story. A young woman vanishing into the night, the kind of news you wish you could ignore. But then they found her body near the Salt Lake City airport, murdered. It was then that my grandmother realized she had been brushing shoulders with a predator all along. She later admitted to me that she was grateful she wasn't his type. She wasn't a small, cute girl back then, she said, and if she had been, who knows what might have happened. It stayed with her, that awareness of being unknowingly part of his routine. Bundy didn't just walk in and eat, he studied the room. He knew exactly where to sit, near the exit, with a perfect line of sight to the front doors. He blended in perfectly, never raising suspicion. And when he left, he walked into the night, into the very city my grandmother called home, and he began his hunt. For months, he smiled at her, shook her hand, and made casual conversation, all while carrying the darkest secret imaginable. He wasn't just a regular patron, he was a serial killer, sitting comfortably in a restaurant every Thursday, hiding in plain sight, doing an extraordinary job at pretending to be ordinary.